The vastness of the Eastern Front is often portrayed through the use of large quarter army level actions that developed in Eastern Europe during the Second World War. However, the use of these grand-scale depictions results in an alienation of the small units that were inherently conducting the fighting on the ground. In this series, we will take a closer look at small actions on the Eastern Front to better understand how the battles were fought and to dive deeper into the tactics used by local commanders rather than the generals. This offers an often overlooked view in the battles of the Eastern Front, namely that of the regular soldiers, tank crews and engineers on the ground. In this video, we will take a look at the Battle of Khrestysche that was fought in the biting cold winter of 1942. As the Soviets launched their winter offensive in the Rzhev sector, aiming to push back the Germans in front of Moscow, a strong attack was also launched in the southern front against German Army Group South. In mid-January 1942, Kostenko's southwestern front and Malinovsky's southern front launched the Barvenkovo-Lozovaya offensive. This saw the Soviets attack the Germans' positions along the Donets River in front of Izium, south of Kharkov. The Soviet corps, deemed too weak to launch an attack by the German intelligence, smashed through the fragile outpost positions. A quick advance westward was made, and attempts to widen the front southwards towards Slavyansk was attempted. A shortage of winter equipment had forced Army Group South to mainly hold the line using outposts and fortified villages. The units holding these outposts and villages were tasked with delaying the advancing Soviet forces to allow reinforcements to arrive and solidify the line. By late January 1942, the temperatures in eastern Ukraine had dropped to minus 45 degrees Celsius. The snow was almost 1 meter deep, and a biting cold wind made the conditions further unbearable. Having beaten the Germans back from the Donets River and aiming to extend the gap southwards, the Soviets branched off their main axis of advance towards Slavyansk. Along the main road to Slavyansk was the small village of Krestishche, which was held by the 1st Battalion Infantry-Regiment 196 of the 68th Infantry Division. They were to block any Soviet advance towards Slavyansk along the main road. Krestishche was practically an island position as no solid front line existed north of Slavyansk. The battalion was forced to send out patrols to the west to stay in touch with other battalions of the regiment and to keep in touch with the neighbouring regiment of the 257th Infantry Division. The ground was frozen and snow defences had to be made instead, as digging in the ground was futile. Soviet presence in the Krestishche sector, most likely elements of the Soviet 9th Army, was confirmed during the night of 23 to 24 January, when a reconnaissance patrol of the 1st Battalion Infantry Regiment 196 was fired upon northeast of the village. In the morning of January 24, a Soviet patrol endeavoured to enter the village. The 1st Battalion quickly responded and wiped out the platoon-sized element. Throughout the day, further Soviet patrols were seen on the high ground northeast of Krestishche. A captured Soviet officer revealed that the Soviet regiment opposing the 1st Battalion was planning to assault and take Krestishche later that evening, with 2 battalions and a 3rd follow-up battalion. Throughout the 24th, intermittent shell fire from a range of mortars crashed among the German defenders in the town. At dusk, the outposts were bolstered with additional men. Dressed in white parkas, the Germans awaited the imminent Soviet attack. With the extremely cold weather, the sentries were relieved every 30 minutes. At 9:15 p.m, the forward sentries of the 3rd Company saw sailors approach the boundary between the 2nd and 3rd Companies of the battalion. They tried to open fire, but the machine guns had simply frozen. A shot finally went off from a bolt action, alarming the neighbouring sentries. By this time, however, the whiskey-equipped Soviet attackers had been spotted along the whole front. Only those machine guns which had been kept in sight were able to fire into the advancing Soviets. The attackers rapidly closed in on the village, however here this obstructed movement. Unable to jump over the meter-tall snow wall, and most of the guns having frozen in the freezing cold, the initial assault was repulsed. A few of the attackers did manage to penetrate the northern end of the village and quickly sought refuge in one of the houses. However, they were soon knocked out by hand grenades. German mortars and artillery subsequently struck the hill northeast of the village, where the bulk of the Soviet regiment was forming up to launch the main attack on Krestishche. Having been caught in the heavy barrage, both Soviet battalions were forced to abandon the attempt. The 1st Battalion had successfully warded off the first attack on the village. They had captured 43 prisoners and reported that over 100 dead in front of their positions. In return, the battalion is said to have lost 2 men killed, 8 wounded, and a further 3 suffered from frostbite. During the next day, January 25, further Soviet patrols attempted to find a weakness in the 1st Battalion's defensive line. However, both patrols, one from the north and another coming from the southeast, were beaten back by a heavy fire. The Soviets spent most of the 25th improving their positions along the forest edge. Shelters were built, houses were brought up, and observation posts on the crest of the hill were improved as well. As the initial attacks on Krestishche had failed, new plans had to be made to dislodge the 1st Battalion Infantry-Regiment 196 from their positions. In the early hours of 26 January 1942, a 50-men-strong Soviet patrol, some purportedly wearing German uniforms, overcame an outpost in the eastern end of the village. A German squad which occupied the first house came out with guns firing. However, outnumbered and outgunned, they were forced to pull back to the second house. The Soviet party immediately occupied the first house, from where they set up 2 machine guns, with which they were able to fire into the ranks of the 13th Company, who were coming up on the double. Grenades were lobbed into the second house in an attempt to dislodge the German squad there. Initial attempts failed, but when the house caught fire, the German occupants were forced to abandon their position. By that time, the Germans had collected a counterattack force, which managed to drive the Soviets from the house in a brief engagement with grenades and small arms fire. 9 Soviets manned the 2 machine guns to the last man. As signalling equipment was found inside the house, the battalion commander ordered a preemptive artillery barrage to be laid out in front of the village to destroy, or at the very least suppress, any follow-up force. No follow-up attack came, and the battle once again quieted down in front of Krestishche. The sun rose on 26 January, but a sharp wind and extremely cold temperatures still made life miserable for the soldiers in the line. At 10 a.m., Soviet artillery began to pummel the defences of the 1st Battalion. Harassing fire continued well into the afternoon, heralding yet another Soviet attack on the German positions. Throughout the morning, sentries had reported suspicious behavior on the crest to the northeast, as corpses had vanished and troop activity increased. Intelligence suggested that the main Soviet thrust was massing up in front of the village. Eventually, at 3:30 a.m. on 27 January, the Soviets began their main assault, with 2 battalions attacking the village from the northeast. The howling wind drowned out any noises, but the sentries of the 1st Battalion were alert. Without artillery support, the leading Soviet troops neared to within 50 meters from Krestishche when they started shouting, heralding the attack. The German defenders responded with a hail of fire, mowing down most of the attackers. A few survivors managed to penetrate the forward lines, but they were quickly overwhelmed within the first streets of the village. German artillery intervened soon after the initial assault, further dispersing the attack. Within the hour, the Soviet attack had died out, and the Germans, while almost certainly over-exaggerating the numbers, reported that the Soviets had 900 casualties. The assault towards Slavyansk along the main road at Krestishche had ended in a local Soviet defeat. The successful Soviet offensive across the Donets River had petered out, and staunch German resistance north of Slavyansk, exemplified by the defense of Krestishche, prevented the Soviets from breaking through to the important town between Kramatorsk and the Donets River. The Soviet offensive had cut a big hole in the German offensive line south of Kharkov, but this salient was solidifying as further German resistance prevented an overall breakthrough. The defense of Krestishche highlighted the importance of weapon care and discipline. Without a careful maintenance of machine guns and other weaponry, further jamming would have prevented the 1st Battalion to respond to the Soviet attacks in the way that they did. The rotation of sentries further put the battalion's line in constant alert. Additionally, the availability of local artillery and mortar fire in suppressing attacks and aiding defenders with warding off sharp local assaults proved indispensable. This was Destroy. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, why not consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. I hope to catch you in another one. Cheers.